The market is sharply lower on Monday. Again, the bottoming process. Either we're going to get a higher low or a divergence, one or the other, with the oscillator, MACD, and RSI. Talked about this at great length and detail last week and over the weekend. The Dow was down 2.5%, down over 1,000 points at the low, down 971 points. The S&P down 2.36%. Down 124.5 points. NASDAQ down just over 2.5% there. Russell down just over 2%, 2.14%. The VIX was up 14%. The VIX is now predicting that in the next two trading sessions, either Tuesday, Wednesday, there's an 85% chance we'll get an update for a bounce or bottom. We may go lower before that bounce happens. Did you hear what I just said? We may go lower. We may try to test the 200-week moving averages, as I've been talking about. But again, just predicting that either Tuesday or Wednesday we will have an up day. 85% chance we do, 15% chance we don't, based on the historic closes. Again, continuing concerns from late last week that Trump's going to fire Powell. And again, I think this is a bunch of nonsense. We saw Trump do this in his first term with Powell. We saw Trump do it earlier this year at the beginning of his second term. We saw Trump try to put pressure on the Fed to cut rates, and then he walked it back and things calmed down. You're going to see the same thing here. I sincerely doubt Trump's going to make some kind of attempt to fire Powell, and there's legal questions surrounding if that's even possible. I'll leave that for the legal experts. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Trump's going to tone it down. He's probably not helping. Trump's probably not helping himself by doing this, but he's trying to put maximum pressure on the Fed. Cut rates. I don't think the Fed's going to budge. I think they're not going to cut rates. Maybe he's trying to rattle markets so that they do. I don't know. I have no idea. But bottoming process, and all you got to do is look at what happened with Bitcoin today. Bitcoin, we're getting the breakout over the weekend here, and Monday surging. Stock market's going to follow Bitcoin's lead. It's just ahead of the stock market. But the sell-off right now, this is just an excuse. Oh, Trump's going to fire Powell. Excuse for the sell-off, likely to create the lower high or the divergence to complete the bottom. I think you got a good shot that we have a higher low that sets up quickly. We've seen Bitcoin break out. Again, I have this trend line right here with the bull flag. I have another trend line where we include the shadow completely right here that we just broke out of today. Those two trend lines, we've broken out of both of them. The 10's gotten above the 20. You've got the RSI back in positive territory. You've got the MACD down here moving in a positive territory. I'm referring to 50, above 50 there on the RSI. The Bitcoin MACD is moving in a positive territory, completing these divergences. The market is likely going to follow Bitcoin up to the double top confirmation or the double bottom confirmation line here, installing at the 200 period. I've been warning that we were going to do that. We were going to come up to that 200 for a test, could even back test the trend lines before attempting to break out. But again, Bitcoin surging. It was up over 3.5% at the highs. It's up 2.5% right now. It's not closed yet. But again, the market is likely going to follow Bitcoin. Bitcoin's likely peaked here. The market could set up a higher low or a lower low to complete a divergence, one or the other. All kinds of signals. We saw the bottoming signals with Bitcoin. Then we've got the momentum turning bullish. Now we're seeing all the trend signals begin to turn bullish, and we get a breakout with Bitcoin. The market is likely going to follow. The question is, do we get a higher low or divergence? If we go lower, again, you got that 200-week moving average I've been talking about. Talked about it over the weekend. Do we get a confirmation of a higher low here intraday, or do we get a divergence developing? If we can get a higher low, you got to flip all the red back to green and turn it around. So we'll be watching. Signals continue to be bearish. This is likely about to end with a higher low or a lower low. When it does, you'll see all my signals begin to turn back to bullish. This line right here, circles, is marking the trend. This line right here is marking the momentum. We've got to get back above both of those and then flip the background back to green. Ours have been red since just after the February top when we formed that negative divergence. You got to flip them back to green. NASDAQ has that trend line. It's breaking out of its trend line, by the way, We have the one right here on the S&P from the high to this peak right here, and we never did quite reach it right here. NASDAQ did, S&P didn't. Got to be able to get back above that level. Got to be able to get back above the line right here, flip the bars back to green. Again, bars right here, been bearish ever since the peak right there. Got to turn that around. We're going to get a recovery. We're still going to recover. Even if we have a 5-leg push lower, you're still going to end up getting a 3-leg push back up for a counter trend. My guess, though, is you're going to have end up reaching new highs on into the summer or early fall, and then I think it's going to top. PA has got to rebound back up here with maybe a higher low or a lower low. We got to rebound back up and clear this area here and try to move towards our 50 and our 200 period and horizontal resistance if we're going to recover. You see China come into the negotiating tables. I think they're about to see a massive rally. You're going to see a rally of hope, as I continue to say. Again, we had the cloud turn back to bullish here. We got back above the cloud right here. Again, if we establish a higher low, then again, we could try to get a higher high. The sell signals were reaffirmed here, and then here, the bullish signal here can hold, and we can get a higher low, higher high. Then you could turn all that around and get rid of the red. Again, the signal's been bearish ever since the top here. We tried to flip momentum here a couple times, but couldn't flip the bars. Couldn't get rid of the trending, bearish trending signals. They remain red. So again, we're watching to see if we can flip some of this possibly this week. Go and make a new low. And if we do, watch that 200-week moving average. S&P did get some bottoming signals over here. And again, the cloud that we just saw on the other chart. And right here, these signals right here, we got a bottoming signal, a short-term bottom, and we get a big rally back up. We had that historic rally back up. Over 13%, that rally from the low, 9.5% in one day. Do we now get a higher low? We'll be watching. We needed the S&P to have momentum, get in positive territory. Didn't. It turned right back down. We had this divergence that's given us this rally up. Tried to get some green. Now we're going back to red. So again, we establish a higher low here. Go down to the 200-week moving average, and it really comes down to that. I think we're in a bottoming process, but we're being told, we're going to have Black Monday. We're going to have 1987 crash all over again. Kramer's out there running around recently telling us we're going to have Black Monday, and everybody's repeating it. Weren't saying that back up at the top. The Kramer and the herd, they're very bearish at bottoms. And again, the 87 crash, that was a 25% crash in one day. Had that when Kramer runs around and tells us it's about to happen. That's not the way it works. And everybody's expecting it and thinking it's going to happen. It happens when nobody thinks it's possible that it's going to happen. Have the momentum line turning back to bearish here, turn back to bullish. We'll be watching to see, do we establish a higher low or lower low? Once the bottom's complete with one of those two scenarios, then I think you're going to follow Bitcoin's lead. We've got to flip bars. We've got to flip bars back to bullish here, and in this case blue. Here we got to get back above this line that continues to act as resistance. Now, quickly, again, told you to be watching for a red awesome oscillator bar to either confirm a higher low or lower low. Told you that we could get that late last week. I told you we could still get a deeper pullback for a higher low, or even try to move to a new low to the 200-week moving average, but then you're going to bottom. Drop below the 200-week moving average and stay below it to usher in the bear market. I doubt we're going to see that happen. I think you're going to either bounce off of it or not reach it like we did in 2023. But you got red bars. Either we're going to get a higher low or a divergence with the MACD and the awesome oscillator here. So we're going to be watching. Going to be looking for a rally back up to the 200 period. All the gaps that we've seen that are overhead, S&P and NASDAQ, we're going to rebound, and especially NASDAQ. We got a lot of gaps there. We're going to see these gaps attempted to be filled. We have another gap today, another gap lower. We've got these gaps back over here and up here, and we've got all these different gaps that are going to be filled. We're going to go back and test the 200 period moving average. Get back above that for a recovery. Bitcoin's testing the 200 period right now. We're likely going to see the S&P eventually do that in the not too distant future. We'll be watching. Does the red awesome oscillator bar and the crossover in the MACD, does it give us a divergence, or do we confirm a higher low? Got to get a bullish reversal of conditions to turn things around. Bearish reversal of conditions shows us momentum is still bearish. Been that way ever since we had the rejection at the 200. The doji, I told you something big was getting ready to happen. The doji told us that. We had a push down. Continue the move down in, again, a possible three-leg push in a measured move. Can we establish a higher low here? We'll be watching in the weekly time frame. We have our 200-week moving average. That's this little black line right here. We didn't reach it. In 2023, we didn't reach it either. There's been other times in this long-term bull market that we didn't reach it. Other times we do. If we go lower, watch that. That's at 46.89. So let's just round up 46.90. 46.90 if we take out that low, just directly under that low. That's the diversion scenario that we would bounce surrounding this area and then begin to see the green bars. The other scenario is that the sell-off's done and we establish a higher low, but you got to come back up here, get back above the 10-week moving average, come back up to test the 50, the green line, which is almost equivalent to that 200 period moving average in the daily time frame. Again, I'll be watching for a green awesome oscillator bar to appear at some point. If we get a massive rally, let's calm down with tariffs. China comes to the negotiating table, announces formal negotiations with the U.S., pauses the tariffs on China, which again is likely going to happen very soon. We're being told there's no way it's going to happen, but I'm telling you it's going to happen. Told Europe wasn't going to come to the negotiating table either, and all the other countries now, the majority of them standing in line to negotiate. So again, could we establish a higher low? Could we see something happen, breakthrough with negotiations between the U.S. and China? I think that's very likely. The bearish scenario would be short term. We come back and we test this 200-week moving average. Again, the bears need a push below the 200 and not be able to get back above it for a very bearish scenario. I think that's highly unlikely because even if you get a 5-leg push back down, say you get a 5-leg push back down, you still got to get a 3-leg push back up to establish a lower high. If you have a 5-leg push down, a 3-leg push is going to follow back up. Here, the 200-week for NASDAQ at 15,783. And again, do we see green in the not too distant future? Do we come back and we hit the 200-week or just move beyond it and then bottom out? Or do we establish a higher low? Scenario is possible. Red awesome oscillator bar on the NASDAQ today. MACD is not rolled over. The MACD did roll over on the S&P. Again, do we establish a higher low here or get a lower low? We didn't close at the lows, and we tried to get a little bottoming tails on both NASDAQ and S&P, but again, still may not be out of the woods yet. You can get back above the 10-period moving averages if you can get a bullish reversal of conditions, flipping the bars back to blue, back to a green cloud, back above the 20-period that we just got rejection at, then again, you can turn it around. We'll be watching to see, but regardless, whether a lower low or a higher low, I think you're in a bottoming process. Please consider supporting the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel. Most YouTube channels have sponsors. I choose not to do that. I don't want to sell you things. So I just ask that you take a moment, partner with me, do what you can to help out and support the channel today. Just follow the link below to take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Thank you for your consideration for that. We have the VIX bouncing off the 20-period moving average. The VIX being up today by 14%. The VIX is predicting again in the next 2 days that we will have bounce or a bottom. The VIX calls have been mixed. Usually the VIX calls are very good unless you start going parabolic, which we've done. It's made a lot of good calls, don't get me wrong. Been perfect. There's still a 15% chance the VIX will be wrong, but there is an 85% chance based on the historical data that the VIX will be correct. About the odds, about trying to day trade things with the VIX. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the VIX is saying, hey, we're going to get a bounce or bottom in the next 2 trading sessions based on historic closes. We turn back down, then the S&P could establish a higher low. If the S&P ends up going to a new low, then the VIX could get a lower high and they could diverge. Now, right now, so the VIX top over here is the S&P bottom. Sometimes it plays out that way. Other times they diverge at turning points we'll be watching. If the signals turn back up, if we get more volatility, if we do, does the S&P move to a new low? Or do they end up turning back down? The VIX loses the 20-period moving average, and we see the indicators turn down and not be able to recycle back up. below the 220 period and dropping below this low. So again, going to be watching. Do we establish a higher low here at low or at lower levels? Watching the S&P, which scenario plays out. But again, I believe that one of those two scenarios will establish a bottom. The bears on social media today, just worsening. It's worsening. It's not worsening yet. We're not moving to a new low. As they continue to tell us we're going into the next Great Depression, have a recession. This is likely the preview of coming attractions, and we're probably going to get a rally and recover, and things are going to calm down. Then I think you'll get the complete collapse. Again, we've dropped 21% on the S&P, and Powell still has not been panicking. He's still concerned. He's negative comments about the economy and the tariffs, still concerned about inflation. Exactly what the Fed did in 2007. See things calm down, then we're going to be hearing, again, that we're going to have the soft landing nonsense again and all the rest of it. Have a recession. This is likely the preview of coming attractions. Now, the other thing is that, Trump is trying to put maximum pressure on Powell to cut rates. You need to understand, Powell's not the only one that has a say in it. They take a vote on it. More often than not, the Fed members tend to follow the Fed chair's lead. Not always, but more often than not. The Fed chair has a great influence on the committee. And again, more often than not, historically, they have followed the Fed chair's lead. So all I'm saying is even if Trump to get Powell replaced somehow or Powell to resign, again, there are other voting members with regards to rate decisions. And again, the Fed is doing what they always do. The Fed, they continue to be concerned about inflation. Trump's got these tariffs, and so, Powell's all worried about inflation. Tariffs don't cause inflation. Inflation is caused by an increase in the money supply, not by tariffs. And again, a rise in prices is not inflation. Inflation is when all prices rise, and that's an increase by the money supply. It's got, Powell and the Fed, they buy into all this Keynesian nonsense, basically is fake economics. They never see the recessions coming. That's why they never, saw the housing bubble. That's why they told us inflation was transitory. That's why, because they believe all this Keynesian nonsense. To understand that. Last week, Powell was interviewed. He expressed great concern about the economy, and so Trump's very concerned about the tariffs, and so Trump is trying to put pressure, and some might even say trying to blame Powell for what's going on. And Trump did the very same thing in his first term. So you have to understand this is just an excuse for the sell-off. Like I said earlier in Trump's second term here, he did the same thing, and then he walked it back about interest rates and the cuts, and the same thing's going to happen here, and we're likely in a bottoming process. You over the weekend and late last week with the videos again to be watching. Do we set up a higher low or a lower low? Talked about the different Elliot Wave counts, and this count again suggests that we bottomed in A, B, C. We have a leading diagonal if we're in sections of 3 right now. Talked about that possibility, but you got to get back above the 200 period moving average, and then 50 has eventually got to get back above the 200 period here in the 60-minute chart. Bitcoin's 4-hour chart is almost equivalent to the 60-minute chart of the S&P because Bitcoin trades around the clock. It's already gotten the golden cross, the 50 back above the 200. Starting to see it with the Bitcoin ETF in the 60-minute time frame, IBIT and others. Again, I'm looking for a lower high. We sold off. We rallied at the end of the day. We're going to be watching to see if we confirm a lower high here, and then can we resume the advance? Again, tensions continue to be escalated between the U.S. and China. Talked about how China is doing little things in addition to their retaliatory tariffs, which they said they were going to stop, and the rare earth, there it is, minerals. There's a few other things that they're doing, and now put pressure on countries making a deal with the U.S. They'll retaliate against those countries if they end up harming China and the trade policies and so forth. So we're just still seeing things continue to escalate. But again, telling us, like the headline today over at CNBC was, the sell-off's worsening. No, it's not. We're not moving to a new low. We still could and hit that 200-week moving average, but we're not seeing it worsen. We're not seeing it go to a new low. We're getting a higher low at this point. Maybe it doesn't play out that way, but well, could. So this count right here, again, I have a couple different Elliot Wave counts. Elliot Wave, I never traded as speculation. What I do is I use it to validate or invalidate counts. So this count, I think, is still very, very much in play. If we end up getting a higher low, I think you could have a possible bottom in here, or with a leading diagonal scenario here where we have sections of threes, certainly possible. We've got one, and now we're getting two. And the other possibility is that we have a truncated fifth. I talked about this, and we have a one, and now we're getting a two. So again, we had a bottom here or a truncated fifth for the bottom here. These counts suggest that the ABC move is done, and intermediate wave 4 is done. And have 5 minor waves now to rise up and complete intermediate wave 5. These are the bullish counts. I've talked about the bullish and the bearish counts. The counts I'm showing you here are the smaller subwaves for minor wave 1, pardon me. Minor wave 1 of intermediate wave 5. Okay, so all of this is going to make up the wave 1. Now maybe it's here, maybe it's higher, and again I have it on the daily chart a little different. This is a leading diagonal scenario. This scenario right here, I have it coming up to horizontal resistance. In the daily time frame, I have it going a little higher. It's a drawing of speculation, but they both have the scenario that we're carving out minor wave 1 and that intermediate wave 4 has completed in an ABC move done. Here it is on the daily chart, and again, this whole thing going higher, either up to, like on the 60-minute chart, up to here, which is horizontal resistance near our 200 period, or overthrowing it as I've drawn here towards the 100 period moving average, of pink line there. Regardless, again, I'm looking at a wave 1, okay? And maybe the angle changes. This is speculation, but I think that this is going to be forming over the next few months should we have the bottom. The other scenario is we don't have the bottom in yet, but we're about to get it at the 200-week moving averages in the weekly time frame. This scenario right here says, again, intermediate wave 4 is done with an ABC move, and we're now about to get a 5-leg push higher, which again you can see right here, and I have that taking us on into August or September up in here above this February peak. Now, if we rally up and establish a higher low, and I talked about Friday or short trading week for Good Friday there, I talked about the on Thursday, either getting a higher low there or deeper. We're getting the deeper here. That scenario would say we get a higher low, then go and clear this dotted red line, 5504, which is the low over here, and that would invalidate the bearish count, and that would be the wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, the angle could change. The angle for 1 could be more, like this, and 2, and 3, and so forth. Okay, and 3 be longer or shorter. It's speculation. Okay, but this is what I'm watching for. This is the bullish count, and this is the count that says, hey, the bottom is in, and we're going to see that rally back up. Now, here's the bearish count. The bearish count says, no, we don't have a 3-leg push down, which again, I believe we do have a corrective move. The bearish count says, no, we're getting a 5-leg push lower, and the market is peaked. We have 1, 2, 3. This is 4. It almost got invalidated with an overlap. We had a high here of 54.81. We had the low over here at 55.04. It almost got invalidated, but it didn't. And then we push on down, and we get 5, going forward, and then we have a 5-leg push lower. That's the bearish count. We rally back up above 55.04. Bears have a real problem because you have a clear 3-leg push lower. Okay, I told you, even if we do end up pushing a little bit lower than this low over here, it could still be an extended wave C. If we establish a higher low, then it's going to really invalidate and get a push up through 55.04. It's going to invalidate the bearish count. And again, that likely tells us two things: that bottom is in, and that we're going to go make new highs. Because if you have a 3-leg push lower, it's corrective. It's not impulsive. The 5-leg push lower is impulsive. That's what the bears need for the market top to be in. My personal belief is that this move has been corrective. There's still risk, even in the corrective scenario, to get another push lower. And I didn't show you that in a moment ago, but I did show you over the weekend and all last week. Even if we get another push down, it could just be an extended C. Very well could see a higher low scenario set up here. Now, extremes on the RSI and the MACD, and here on the RSI, again, you're either going to confirm a higher low and then eventually get back above 50. Okay, ever since we dropped below the 50 level right here, we formed this divergence right here. We dropped below 50. We've been there ever since. So rally back up to the just above the 200. We stalled there. The rally back up here, we stalled at horizontal resistance right here from that low that was made. And again, turned down, back down just underneath that 50 level. If we can get a higher low here or lower levels and still get a higher low, you need to get back above 50 to complete confirmation of a higher low. You need to get back above this level to really validate this as a bottom. Our hollow red candlestick has a bottom right here in the bottoming tail, and complete the three-leg push lower, which will tell us, again, we're likely going to move to new highs. And again, you think that right now, you're considered a Neanderthal. The people, the herd that was telling us there was no way we were going to sell off and there was no way we were going to have a recession. And now they believe we're going to have this recession, and there's going to be other issues going forward that are going to rattle markets after we go to new highs. Same thing here. You have the MACD rolling over. You got the stochastic rolling over, but you got the MACD rolling over. So again, we're either going to get a divergence or we're going to confirm a higher low. One or the other that's going to create a bottom. Now, if we go lower, then again, you have potentially a five-leg push lower or an extended wave C, one or the other, likely bottom surrounding at the 200 period. Now, we may have already bottomed because, like I said, over the weekend, again, at the 2023 low, the sell-off in 2023, we never reached the 200-week moving average. There are times in history where we didn't reach it. You found support at it or just underneath it. 200-week moving average. We're likely going to bounce and bottom either just above it as we're doing here or tagging it as we move lower, one or the other. We'll be looking for clues here. It's a bearish case. Same thing for the NASDAQ. It broke the trend line. You know, we had these trend lines and we broke the trend line. I told you, again, we might try to bounce off the trend line in the cloud or, again, break it if the sell-off may not be done, even for the higher low scenario. The risk is we come back and we take out these lows. NASDAQ in the 60-minute time frame got a hollow red candlestick here, and then we got a higher low. So, again, possible we're just getting a higher low and we're going to begin to get the recovery back above these 200 period moving averages, come back and fill these gaps. You got a bunch of gaps back here on the NASDAQ that we're likely going to see filled. And again, if we establish a higher low, you could be getting leading diagonal. Certainly possible. Need more evidence of that in sections of threes, which is still a possibility here. Can we confirm a higher low? Or do we end up getting another reference point of a divergence on these indicators, the MACD and the RSI right here? And if we can get back above the 5,200, then again, we could get a big rally. NASDAQ turning off the trend line. Again, same thing. Do we get a divergence or a confirmation of a higher low? Again, we have these death crosses. Again, the death crosses can be associated with bottoms or prolonged corrections like in 2022 or bear markets like in 2007 and 8 into 2009. Again, we don't have the MACD rolling over like on the S&P 500, but again, could we confirm a higher low here or get a divergence? Could we go a little bit lower? We still could. Again, we'll be watching to see, does this low hold? Again, we're being told by the media, oh, things are worsening, it's getting horrible. We're not moving to new lows. That's not true. Probably it's darkest before the dawn, as the old saying goes. We're probably getting very, very close to formal negotiations being announced between China and the U.S. It's going to happen. But again, the thing is, do we get a higher low or a divergence here for NASDAQ and S&P? Continue to point out that NASDAQ has already invalidated a bearish count if this is a wave 1 and a wave 1, a wave 2, and a wave 3. It's already been invalidated with the overlap right there. If this is a wave C, if this is still wave C, it's already been invalidated. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, 4, and now we get 5. Whoops, didn't do that right. 4, which has already been overlapped with the low of wave 1 and the high of wave 4. It's already been overlapped. So again, could we have a bottom in with an ABC? I think that's very possible, but we got to be able to recycle back up, get a massive rally. Now we have a gap today. We had a gap last week. We have the gap up here. There's some of these other gaps I've talked about. You got a lot of gaps, and we're going to go back and fill these gaps, and then we'll be watching as we test the 200. You still have these larger inverse head and shoulder patterns that still could very much be in play. If we, again, rally towards the 200 or overthrow it and hit our 100 period moving average, you could still have first head and shoulder pattern in play on both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Be able to get back above the 20 period here on the NASDAQ, though we got rejection at it right here at the black candlestick at the 20 period moving average, and that is we have to see happen. And we got our 10 period curling up, even though we dropped back below it. If we can rally back up to fill these gaps and get back above the 20 period, you can see the 10 get back above the 20. We've already seen that with Bitcoin. And again, it is likely in a bottoming process and going to follow Bitcoin higher. Bitcoin usually leads the market more often than not. Sometimes the market leads Bitcoin, but more often than not, Bitcoin leads the market.